ein jüdisches Hochzeitslied.
This is a Jewish wedding song, and at the same time, it has a vision in itself, the belief that you will hear the voice of joy
Und die Stimme.
and the voice of the bride and the voice of the groom.
Oh, Yishama, B'arei Yehuda,
Ja, ganz herzlichen Dank, Herr Kempin, für dieses.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Hemping, for this Jewish song and for this great start into today's evening. Thanks also for the break of the fast before this. And this was a very good introduction. I think that some of us would have preferred you to just continue. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, Deputy Rachel, I'm very happy that so many people came to this event tonight.
Hat insbesondere
The topic of religion has
Aufmerksamkeit erfahren. Ich erinnere mich
received different attention in the last years. I remember it quite well when Frank-Walter Steinmeier was
im Auswärtigen Amt gegründet hat, das
creating a team about this topic of religion, and the reactions were quite different. This at least is my very personal point of view, and I think that this work was very successful and making a lot of sense. And that's also why I'm very pleased that also from the side of the BMZ, there is an impulse for dealing with religion. So this project has had diverse impact in the past years. And one is also tonight's event, where we will deal with the question if religion is a bridge builder between disruption and hope. And I'm very pleased that we have many different panelists here tonight to discuss this topic. And our moderator will also introduce our panelists. The topic religion. I would like to go back to what I said earlier when this work group was created in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. On a global level, for 4 out of 5 people, religion plays a central role. And this is a huge difference to other discussions that we have here in Germany. Religion seems to be a not so important topic. And that's not at all the case in international relations. In our work here, as the GA said, we can say that the topic of religion and sustainable development plays a huge role. We have a sector project dealing with these questions, and we see that it's a very good argument that also politicians need to deal more with this topic, that especially religious actors are often the last persons of trust in difficult situations that you can work with. And this is an argument to dive deeper into the questions of religion and belief. So that's why we are very pleased to have that opportunity tonight. Our moderator, Khushwant Singh, who is not only the head of the Secretariat of International Partnership, but he'll also be a host tonight. And he will be able to set many impulses. And I'm very pleased that you took over this responsibility with your team for all the preparation and the concept, and also for this whole evening. So I will give you the floor. And once again, a very warm welcome, and I'm very happy to see all of you here tonight.
Ja, ganz herzlichen Dank, Herr Schäfer-Gümbel, für diese.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Schäfer-Gümbel, for this great introduction. And also thanks to you, Daniel. We've been knowing each other for 20 years. And we had the feeling that this was a great match for tonight. So thank you so much for being here. Now I'm asking our high-ranked panelists to come here on stage.
Lucia.
We have Maria Lucia. We have Mr. Rachel, Esben.
Ich darf natürlich nicht unseren Vorstandssprecher
And
vergessen.
of course, I should not forget our chairman,
Aber nur einmal.
but only once.
Schön, dass Sie es geschafft haben. Wir haben Simultanübersetzung.
We have simultaneous interpreting if you need that. We have prepared headsets for you. You can take them. Our colleagues from the team will support you. And I've learned that the channel 1 is English and channel 2 is English. You will be surprised about all the expertise here on the panel. The specific expertise, political expertise, but also the linguistic expertise. But I will not go into detail. So we will now start with the panel. First of all, I will introduce our guests. Then we will have a discussion. You already said that there will impulses, and I hope that you will take something with you for you personally and also for your work. And then there will be questions from the audience. You will have the opportunity to ask your questions. So you can ask questions, but please don't give statements. I will be very strict on that. And then afterwards, we will have, again, very nice music. And then obviously many people are already waiting for the finger food. There will be some very nice things to eat. And I think it will be a nice evening. I can keep my introduction very short because we have a chairman here who can say something about all the topics, so I can make that very short. I will just say 2 or 3 points which might be relevant for tonight's event. Next to all the potential that we have just mentioned, we can also see that we live in a world where 80% of the world population live in countries where the religion is restricted, and more than 70% live in countries where civil society engagement is severely limited, and also obviously the engagement of religious actors. We call them shrinking spaces. And in our work, we repeatedly encounter individuals who believe that we are attempting to persuade them to pray. I assure you that we are not competing with churches, temples, or other sacred places of worship. But in our project, we want to find out where it makes sense to work with religious actors so that we can reach our goals that we set ourselves in the international cooperation. That's our focus today. I would like to give you 3 short examples so that you understand that we don't only speak in a very abstract way, but we can put many things into practice in a concrete way. It has been already some years ago, but it still shows the importance of religion. In 2020, we were able to save 400 girls from genital mutilation. And this was only possible because we worked in close cooperation with 100 Muslim and Christian authorities. In Jordan, which is a country with a lot of lack of water, we teamed up with the Ministry of Water and Mineral Resources and the Ministry of Religious Affairs, and we were able to train over 2,500 Muslim dignitaries on how to reduce water wastage, and this worked out well. And another example that shows that also less known religious minorities have made significant contribution during the coronavirus pandemic, which you might have already forgotten. Sikhs distributed over 1 million free meals worldwide. They organized oxygen deliveries to India and neighboring regions. And as Jews and Buddhists, they were able to offer hope and pastoral care in times of isolation, often via social media and video calls. And they also helped to combat fake news and conspiracy theory regarding vaccines. So we are not naive, but we deliberately talk about the positive contributions. And we want to do this because whenever we switch on the TV or the radio, we often hear things about religion which are negative. When religion is misused for power politics or sexualized violence. So today we want to look at the light of religion, not the shadows. So now we'll introduce our high-ranked guest. I will start with Mr. Rachel. He studied politics, history, and public law. He works in the German Bundestag in a secular state that is supposed to guarantee religious neutrality. But at the same time, he is also the federal government commissioner for freedom of religion and belief worldwide. And as such, he deals with societies in which religion often determines freedom, belonging, and sometimes even survival. And then we have Professor Amin, he's an Islamic scholar who earned his doctorate in Bonn. That makes Mr. Rachel very happy. He is the state secretary in the Indonesian Ministry of Religious Affairs. So this is an exciting dual role in the country with the largest Muslim population in the world. Then we have Maria Lucia. We have made a lot of jokes about her name and also about everything that is happening to people with migration background on the airports, 5 hours from Frankfurt to Berlin. It was like a school trip. I cannot give you any details, but her name played an important role. I hope I pronounced it correctly. She studied peace and conflict transformation and international relations. She is a director of Arigatou International in Geneva, and she works with children, young people, and religious actors on mental health, violence prevention, and values education. Then on my left, we have Dr. Esben Lunde Larsen, who works at the World Bank and the Pandemic Fund, and on the One Health approach. And at the same time, he is a doctor of theology and former minister of education, science, environment, and food. He is very young still, but he had a great career. And he also works on questions value-oriented towards the common good and how we can involve religion in politics. I should not forget you. I've just learned it. Thorsten Schäfer-Gümbel studied political science, worked in politics for many decades. He has been on the GIZ Management Board since 2019, became its spokesperson in 2022, and in a period of dwindling resources and political and social disruption, he's not only director of labor relations, but also a crisis manager. So we have 5 panelists here who are experiencing the same world in transition, but in different contexts. So, Mr. Rachel, let me start with you. When you arrive at the Bundestag in the morning, we have been there today. It is quite impressive. The architecture is really impressive. I've been there for the very first time, and you represent your constituency, but you also have your own Christian beliefs when you walk into the Bundestag, and you don't leave these Christian beliefs at the door. And what conclusions do you draw from this for your role as Federal Government Commissioner for Freedom of Religion and Belief?
Mir ist etwas ganz wichtig.
One thing is very important for me. It is at the beginning of our Constitution. The human dignity of every person is untouchable. You have spoken about my Christian belief. So I can also say this in a different language, whatever our Constitution says in a legal way. And it means that the human being is unique and it is like God, and nobody can take this human dignity away. And after these horrible experiences in the Second World War, where people fought against other people because they had a different belief, a different religion, another cultural background. So the founding fathers and mothers of our Constitution who were in the prison here in Berlin-Tegel, and they thought, what do we have to do differently? And the central belief was that everybody has a human dignity that nobody can take away from them. And this is really important for me. This has shaped me. Also, if I'm coming from my constituency to the German Bundestag, even in my position as a commissioner, I learn new things every day. When I speak to people, when people come to talk to me, when the daughter of a jailed, imprisoned pastor in the Zion Church in China, and his daughter tells me that dozens of pastors were imprisoned in China. So for me, what I see is that there are people who cannot express and practice their religion because the state does not allow them to do this. And this moves me. And I would like to contribute with my office and in my office that we can help these people and we can make sure that they have the right to their religion. It is Article 18 in our constitution. And we need to create awareness in the public here in Germany and on an international level and in negotiations with other countries. But I always say we have to start at home. So in my constituency or also in your place, and I am here to welcome you. I think it's so great that you're so interested in this topic. I see many important people here, such as the president of the World Hunger Help, and all of you who are here, members of the parliament. And this is a good start for an exciting discussion so that we can together talk about this topic. Thank you so much, Mr. Rache. This really shows very nicely the strong link between your office and what you said about the dignity. Later on in the discussion, we will get back to the topic of dignity. Now, Professor Amin, Selamat Malam. I have been several times to Indonesia. It's a great country, and I'm so happy that you made all the way here. I know that my Indonesian is quite bad, but I think you promised me if I'm able to improve it, I will get the Indonesian nationality. I will get to work on that. You have earned your doctorate in Germany, and now you're Secretary General of the Indonesian Ministry of Religious Affairs. And which experiences in Europe have had the greatest influence on your current understanding of the relationship between religion and the state? We have seen in what Mr. Rachel said that your own experience play a huge role in such an office that you had.
Well, Dankeschön.
Bitte schön.
Ich bedanke mich für die Einladung.
Thank you for the invitation,
Bei Ihnen zu sein.
and I'm very happy to be here.
Ich habe meine Doktorarbeit hier gemacht eigentlich.
I earned my doctorate here,
20 Jahre habe ich nicht mehr benutzt.
but I haven't used my German in the last 20 years, so I forgot a lot, so I will have to speak in English. Thank you.
Having been trained in Western scholarship, of course, I'm very much influenced by the way of thinking, by the critical thinking, and also influenced the way I see my religion. And also in Indonesia, Indonesian religiosity has been experiencing a new phase of religiosity. Religion has to be socially impactful. Religion has to be economically empowering, spirituality enlightening. This is what we are now fighting for. So being truly religious is not only being devout, it's not only about theology, it's not about eschatology, it's not only about moral character. It is about increasing the quality of public life. And religion has to play its role in inviting people to be truly religious. And this is what we are now, the Ministry of Religious Affairs are fighting for. So in terms of the relation between state and religion in the context of Indonesia, it is very productive. It is even very romantic. Every people, every religious believers can perform their religion very freely. The government facilitate them, and they have been mutually, helpful. So we are very proud that the articulation of religion in Indonesia, if I may claim that this is one of the best articulation in terms of the relation between state and religion. We have no longer issue about the relation between state and religion. If you compare it with our friends in other Muslim countries, for example, there are still tension between the relation between state and religion, how the government should treat religion and how religion see the state. But in Indonesia, owing to the contribution of scholars having been trained in Western scholarship, they have explained, they have contributed to, provide a productive and productive understanding of religion itself. So religion has to support the government. It is a religious obligation to support the government. It is a religious obligation to provide maslahah or the public good to the people. So once again, that this is the meaning of religion that we are now capitalizing in Indonesia, how to make religion instrumental in increasing the quality of public life. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Just one quick question, Professor Amin. There are, as far, I switch to English, gehe wieder zurück ins Deutsche. Es gibt 6 Religionen.
There are 6 religions who are officially recognized, but this also means that there are religions who are not officially recognized. Is this a mandate that you see for yourself, that you also want to strengthen the freedom of religion in these areas, or do you think it's other people who are responsible for?
Pancasila is our constitution, and the first constitution of Pancasila is Ketuhanan Yang Maha Esa, meaning that believing only one God. So those who doesn't believe one God can perform their belief but cannot promote their belief. So we have Islam, we have Christianity, we have Catholicism, we have Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism. But if you have other religion or other belief, which you cannot perform your religion, but you cannot promote it to other people. Because we have Pancasila, we have the Constitution, and the Constitution has admitted 6 religions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Danke. Maria Lucia, auch in Südamerika spielt Religion.
Well, Maria Lucia, in Latin America, religion also plays a very important role, and also in your job. You have been doing this for a long time in Arigatou, and here religion, ethics, and the mental well-being play an important role. And this mental well-being is also very well connected to dignity. So what has your involvement in South America taught you about the social power of religion? And what do you feel is lacking in Europe in comparison?
German is non-existent, so I'm going to speak in English. I hope that I understood the question. So let me start by saying that I come from Colombia, and that religion in Colombia, as in Latin America, and I believe in most of the global South, is not just a set of belief systems. It is really the social fabric of our communities. It's the glue. And I say this particularly in contexts that are affected by violence, inequality, conflict. Religion plays a critical role in supporting people. Religious people and leaders and communities are normally the first to be there for the most vulnerable, but also the ones that remain in the daily life struggles of people. And coming from Colombia, where we had a conflict for 6 decades, I have to say that religion played a very critical role, and particularly Christianity, Catholicism, in paving the way to create a more peaceful society. And this happened in different ways, but in particular the Catholic Church, through the pastorals, through the Episcopal Conference, through Caritas, but also the Lutheran, the Mennonites that were very and are very present in Colombia, were the ones that when we had internally displaced people, 6 million internally displaced people, were there opening the humanitarian corridors, were there denouncing and identifying the human rights violations. They were there supporting the victims' organizations, creating the dialogues in the very rural areas to ensure that there was possibility to speak to one another. It was bishops and clerics that sat down to help, broke a ceasefire in local communities. It was really religious communities and the parish structures that were there when the state was not present and very much absent in many parts of Colombia that were affected by the conflict. So I would say that is the glue, and this is this proximity with the population that makes religion in this part of the world so powerful. Their capacity to mobilize for justice, to protect. And this was very evident also in the work that as Arigatou International we did with local faith communities in El Salvador many years ago with criminal gangs and the children that were risked to be recruited in these criminal gangs. And in this process we did a research, and young people were asked, what would it take for you to leave these criminal gangs, the pandillas? And they said, either we are killed or we join a church. And that demonstrates the power of religion in protection of people. But it's not all, rosy in the context of Latin America, because religion has also been complicit in violations of human rights. And this was very clear with the military dictatorships during the 50s and 80s in Chile, Argentina, and Brazil, where certain parts of the Catholic Church were complicit and supportive of these military regimes. And still today, there are some parts of religious communities that support the violation of some of the human rights. And there is actually a backlash now in terms of human rights in Latin America, precisely because it's pushed also by many religious groups. So while it is important, one needs to recognize that the role is not only positive, but it can also be negative. And I'm saying this also, religion is important. 40% of all Catholics in the world are in Latin America, but we have had also a decrease in terms of religiosity in the region, and I think very much the pattern in many parts of the world. So the Catholicism has been reduced. There are much more evangelicals and Pentecostal churches, but also people that do not define themselves in any religions. In Colombia itself is quadruple the number of people who do not identify themselves with religion. And yet, when they are asked, if religion is important, 9 out of 10 people in Latin America say religion is important in our lives. So coming to the question of Europe, and I have 1 minute, the question of Europe, I do think that you don't need more religion here, but I think that relational, spiritual capital of religion needs to be recognized. And in fact, the recognition of religious actors as critical players in the public sphere. In Europe, we tend to treat and address social challenges through institutions, the legal and all these other aspects. But perhaps we are short in addressing the deeper levels of identity, of issues of fear, of issues that resentment that lead to polarization, to racism, of violence. In other words, I think in certain European countries, there is a less recognition of the inner value of life and inner life in societies. And I think that's an important part of the thinking, because the investment is done in systems, but sometimes we need more investment in the moral imagination, investment in the shared narratives, but also investment in spaces like this where we can dialogue and wrestle with ethical questions. And that is where bringing together different actors and religious actors play an important role. And I don't think it's a risk to democracy and secular societies, but a sine qua non to building more social cohesion and peaceful societies.
Ja, vielen Dank, Maria Lucia. Wir kommen nochmal auf den Punkt zurück aus einer anderen Perspektive.
Thank you so much. You have shown very well the both sides of religion in society, how religion can create identity, but also have an impact on society. But also the actors are sometimes part of the problem. Mr. Schäfer-Gümbel, now we are getting a bit philosophic. The Swede, for example, Dag Hammarskjöld, the Swede who had many admirers and also critics alike. He was the second Secretary General of the United Nations. For him, political action was an expression of spiritual maturity. He saw service to humanity as a responsibility that transcended careers or also institution. And he also emphasized that every human being needs a center of inner peace. And he was also one of the first who talked in the United Nations, and he said that he wanted to create a room for inner center of calm. And in Esben, you said that you named your headquarters Dag Hammarskjöld. Where do you derive from your work ethics as the head of one of the world's largest remaining development organizations? That one gives you guidance in a time of upheavals when development cooperation is being called into question, when also the GIZ is receiving fewer contracts and staff cuts are necessary. Well, thank you so much for this question. Now, first of all, I would like not only to say as a labor director or chair of the management board, but I would like to answer as a person. And I think you have to know to say that I am a convertite. For example, I've been baptized in a Catholic way. And then in the 90s, I left the Catholic Church due to political reasons. And then in Coes Malik, so I also had the possibility to join in there in the Protestant church. And one of my closest friends said it's a symbiotic of the Catholic joy for life and the Protestant way of working. No, yes, it's not a contradiction for me. I feel very well in this. And I mean, religion and being bound to values, that plays an important role to me and gives me an inner peace, and that's part of my identity, apart from all that politics and family have to do with me. This has been shaping me most. Concerning what does that mean for me in the company and what we are experiencing in international cooperation. Now, Catherine Klüger-Eschborg, I would like to stay on what she has said, that we have an all-over attack on empathy. That is her empathy. So we have an all-over attack on empathy. And hearing that, that makes a lot with me, because I think that she's right. Because there are so many attacks that we see and live every day, be it in the political sphere, but also in the international context, where it's all about the fact to really deal with this question of, are we still being empathic? Do we still have the ability to be empathic in foreign policy, for example, and now in the GIZ, for example, we have the great fortune to be able to do something against it, because our task is just the contrary. We are a living tool of showing how we can bring empathy into international relations and to make them concrete, and that gives us so much force also for our staff. We have an incredibly motivated staff and committed staff who really accept this commitment. They want to stay able to be empathic and to make a contribution to make the world a little bit better every day. And that is something which is a great gift that very few people have in this way. And that gives us really the strength and the power in these turbulent times to stay committed every time and to work on that every day in the most difficult contexts with so many partners that we have. And at the end of the day, we want to make it sure that we really want to change the lives of concrete persons into something better. And I think something more would not be possible nowadays. That reminds me of the publication that we had in 2016 when we started International Partnership on Sustainable Development. We said into the GIZ and also a German development corporation with values and cooperation, and Dr. Stehle was also here in the audience, was one of the founding fathers. And we said, okay, we should make a publication where we bring together the basic value of all the religions, and we would like to define how can all the traditions come together to define a good future development. And as you, Mr. Schäfer-Gümbel, in all the traditions, for example, empathy was very important. And one of the translations in German, you can find back there on the tables, because when we started the experiment, all these scholars and scientists, we did not know what they were going to write, but the basic values and mostly empathy, they were very much alike. And this is very enriching for me in such a complex company like the GIZ and all the other multilateral contexts. What brings us really together? And that brings us back to Esben. Esben, you have been working there in the World Bank, for example, and we have learned so much from each other in the past 5 years, but we could learn a lot from that. But you are a theologian and involved in church work in Washington, D.C. And as a minister belonging to a liberal party, you headed various ministries in a secular Danish context. But in everything you do, you see the core of everything you did. You see freedom of speech and freedom of religion and worldview is your guiding star. How do you incorporate these issues into your current field of multilateral cooperation, and what helps you to reconcile your religious beliefs with professional activism, even if you have to do something that you don't want to do, to bring everything against under one turban? I know that you don't wear it, but anyway, I hope you get me.
The ability to handle your own life situation. And there can be many reasons why this can be difficult depending on where in the world we're living. I think COVID-19 taught us an important lecture that all of us can be influenced on our ability to live our life as we would like. And we saw, for example, in the informal sector, how many that was impacted on their direct livelihood because they couldn't move around, they couldn't do their business, there were no customers, and how this impacts daily life for us. Wolfgang Schäuble wrote a book years back called Braucht unsere Gesellschaft Religion? And in this book, he has a point about how religion creates cohesion in society because we are in responsibility to something outside ourselves, a moral influence that enable us to take responsibility for more than ourselves. This has impacted my view on how freedom can generate responsibility in society, also in the multilateral world. And back in 2022, the G20 decided we cannot have a situation again where the most vulnerable in society is impacted this hard by, for example, a new pandemic. And they formed the pandemic fund in the World Bank, where I work today. And it's a very good example on how politics and moral and financial investment goes hand in hand, and why religious actors have a role to play also in collaboration with the multilateral institutions. Why? Because we can come with money, we can come with structure, we can come with a model for governments, but the trusted voice in society is very often the religious voice. And as a former politician, as colleagues here know, politicians aren't the most trusted in society. Hence, it is very important that we have the moral voices to move that agenda as well. So, having the North Star of freedom means creating better livelihoods for people to manage their own life, and the Pandemic Fund in its secular entity invest in this. And we look to the religious sector, not only for co-financing for our projects, but also for implementing capacity, education and training, and community engagement. And we respect very much that health in an organized way has been done by faith-based organizations long before there was something called a welfare state that took care of this. So I hope this explains the trajectory from an academic perspective of freedom into a personal responsibility that can multiply into, for example, investment actions from a multilateral institution.
Ja, danke Esben. Das bringt mich natürlich sofort zum Thema Religion.
Thank you so much. That brings me to the freedom of religion. Mr. Rahel, you have been working in the Vatican, in Israel, and in many other places, and also Palestinian territories in Turkey. You held a wide range of talks there. For example, do you only talk about religious actors? And you also talked about the state repressions, for example, and intimidation and restriction by state actors. And as you, Esben, have, what is needed to ensure what is working for a common good, for example? What concrete steps do you intend to take and achieve in your office to this end, and not only the fight for survival in a system which is under restrictions? What do you think that those who also voluntarily work for that, and often it's religious actors, what can you do to protect them better, and how can you make a better positive contribution to all that who are publicly recognized? What can you do to order that? So what do we need for that? We need the freedom of action, and you need also legal protection. With all the talks that I've been having here, for example, I say that representatives of religious communities, for example, religious actors, they are all feeling pressure. When I go to Turkey, for example, and if I see that for 1,700 years or even more, the Greek Orthodox Church, they have no official status in Turkey. That's a huge problem if 20 to 25% of the Turkish population, the Alawites, they do not have a legal status, and they are under pressure of everything which is important to them. That is a problem. Yesterday also, if I, for example, I also, for example, it might not be a group that I think about, that's the witnesses of Jehovah's, for example, that there are also that. And in 2021, we saw witnesses of Jehovah in presence in Russia because that is their religion. This is alarming to me, because I have to that And if I am in Egypt, I have to talk to the Baha'i people and I have to talk to them in a clandestine way, in a hidden way, because they are not recognized. And also in Iran, that is a topic that we have to put on our agenda, on our political agenda. And on the other hand, I also see, for example, other examples that we talked about it in a great way. Religions, they give a lot of positive things, but they can also be challenging. In Colombia, for example, I have seen that some representatives told me that we want to have representatives of the Catholic Church to go there to certain regions because only there can we be protected against certain criminal bands and organized crime bands, so that religious people have to give you comfort and protection to survive. I mean, this is something you just have to imagine. And therefore, I think that the freedom of religion very clearly and also very concretely, we have to talk about them to give the people the home country that they find in their religion to live their identity. You said 19% are mainly Catholic in your country, and in the world, all in all, it's more than 80% who say religion for us is very important. It shapes my identity. They wake up with God in the morning and they go to bed with the Lord in the evening. But they need that. But 3/4 of them, they live in countries where they do not have this possibility because religion is being oppressed in one or the other way. And I think this shows that we need to shout out in the public, in society, in Germany and all the other countries to be able to live this freedom of religion together. Now, all across the world, we feel an erosion, multilateral coercion, and we feel that the strongest one is right. So, human rights and international law play a central role in this. Maria Lucia, you work closely with international actors in Geneva with a view to this fact. What measures can state and civil society actors take to strengthen coexistence oriented and I would also like to say an empathic cooperation in the long term? What would you say?
Thank you. Yes, so in my work in Geneva, we, as Arigatou International, we work a lot in the space with the human rights mechanisms in Geneva, particularly the permanent missions, the Committee on the Rights of the Child, and during the Human Rights Council sessions. And what we are seeing in this current context is, of course, the importance of human rights law and humanitarian law, but also the fragility of these very laws when the political and ethical commitment erode. And I think that norms do not erode, from one day to another, but they weaken for several reasons. And I mean, one is for sure the tolerance to double standards. One is the selective empathy that replaces universality. But also what we are seeing is how short-term political gains are overriding the long-term commitment to peace and sustainability. And I think this is very often what we are seeing in the discourse, in the narratives that are happening during all these discussions in the Geneva terrain. And we are also seeing the use of the religion and this instrumentalization of religion in these discussions. And very often words like family, protection, become words that are used to exclude the other. And we're seeing political agendas that are using religious language to exclude the minorities, exclude the refugees, and to justify also hate speech. And this is, of course, it's not new, but I think it's happening in a very heightened way at this moment. So what can we do? I really think for concrete aspects. One, we need to reclaim the ethical narrative. Words like solidarity, care, respect for one another, they do belong to the human rights language, but they are being used for political agendas in negative ways. And I think these are, and as you were saying in the beginning, human dignity. This is a word that, yeah, it's very much anchored in religious communities, but it's at the heart of all the human rights mechanisms. This language is being eroded, and it needs to be at the center of the work that we do for the protection of human rights. The second is accountability. We need to strengthen accountability when religion is being used to justify, government saying that they cannot fulfill the rule of law. We need to keep governments accountable for their international commitments that they are making. So Arigatou International, together with 20 partners in September last year, launched a campaign called Stand Up for Children in War. And this campaign was precisely to raise awareness about the ethical and moral imperative to respond to the needs of children and the violation of rights of children in war. Because what we are seeing is that it's not enough the legal obligations, we need to call out our moral and ethical imperative to protect children. And we developed a statement, a joint statement that has been signed by more than 200 organizations, including the members of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, UN agencies, and others, calling for the restoration of the protection of children in war. The most fragile members of society that are being negated food, because food is being weaponized, their rights are not protected, that are being victims of war that they haven't chosen. And I think this should touch us. And so we have been doing this in the Human Rights Council, and we organized a high-level high-level forum in Geneva with more than 40 permanent missions, where children spoke, where faith communities and leaders spoke. And I think this moment where we bring the voices, and that's my third point, the voices of religious communities, the voices of those that are not heard, for example, children and young people, it's critical in this context. And the last one that is never, I would never be tired to recommend is, of course, education. And I think education is one of the most underinvested aspects when it comes to, protection, humanitarian issues. And yet, education plays a critical role to protect children, to empower them, to be, to voice their concerns, to develop their agency, to think critical, and to be able to learn to live together with others. So I think we need to reclaim the human dignity at the center of the public discourse, as you were saying, Thomas. I will leave it.
Ja. Zum Thema Human Dignity, Würde, gehört ja vielleicht auch.
Concerning human dignity, I think there is also another aspect that reflects on what you have said, Maria Lucia, and this is listening to each other. Mr. Schäfer-Gümbel, you wrote an article. It's called Let's Invest in Listening. And in that, you also advocate taking the concerns of development cooperation partners seriously. And in your work, when you travel, you also see religious and other civil society actors as the last anchors or bastions of community and dignity in fragile contexts. And at the same time, we also see that civil society is under pressure, but also other civil other civil society actors play hardly any role in government negotiation, and religion does not really play a role in the UMZ reform concept. But how does the GIZ also work at that as a secular organization? How, with this empathic approach that you have so well described, how do you intend to position yourself in future in order to strengthen religious actors as bridge builders in times of growing state repression and declining resources? Well, first of all, we are a secular federal, but we are not laicistic. And I have to say that. It's not that we are a-religious, for example. And as it is shown today, in the public space, there is sometimes a wrong understanding of secularity, of dealing with religion and religious actors. Of course, I mean, we are a federal company. We are not a donor, so we cannot do everything on our own behalf. We have our clients, for example, and they have to give relevance to what we do. And to Mr. Rachel and also Mr. Kreslov and also others in the parliament sphere, I would like to thank you so much who made sure that the commissioning is taking place. And as Frank-Walter Steinmeier, for example, also said, that also depends on the fact that our clients have to be convinced of the importance of this topic. And with evenings like this, we are giving proof of the fact that this is really giving a relevance of how we can communicate, how can we cooperate, how we can create change. And religion and religious actors, they play an important role. But at the end of the day, as a federal company, we have to say that the final decision is made by others. We are simply the implementers, and we have to live up to also economic standards. But we would like to point out the importance of these standards. Professor Amin, please give us a short answer. And some people are giving me notes. And of course, we also want to make it visible internationally. So we have started international cooperation. What is your idea as the Secretary General, for example, for a good international cooperation? And you are also part of the theme board of PARD.
First of all, I would like to say that international cooperation remain extremely important. And I would like to thank PARD, who has undertaken these very critical issues, because we have developed religious Weltanschauung, or religion worldview by being a part or a member of PARD. So as a Secretary General of the Ministry of Religious Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, I would like to propose to all of us to find a solution that PARD is now facing. I have heard from you that PARD is now having a problem of, in terms of budget, for example. And I know that PARD is, in my understanding, is very important institution. So I would like to propose to find a solution to cope with this problem. This is what I understand from your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Esben, Professor Amin hat betont,
Professor Amin has highlighted that it is important for him to put PARD also in a long term. We're all under pressure. Thorsten Schäfer-Gümbel mentioned it. The GIZ depends on getting orders, otherwise we cannot act. And I have had a look at the numbers. In the World Bank, you deal a lot with numbers. So today we don't need to speak or mention that the GIZ is under pressure, but I still want to say one figure. Well, you're from Denmark. Denmark has reached the ODA quota, and Germany has not achieved this with 0.67%. The US are at 0.22%, and this rate will continue to fall as part of the budget reallocations and are going to defense. The Mormons have spent around $1.45 billion on development cooperation and humanitarian aid. And according to the UNDP, you hear from Islamic Relief, they donate until $1 trillion US. These are the estimations based on the World Bank figures. I could also mention that religious actors have very high overheads. They are often even zero. What conclusions do you draw from the institutional disruptions and the decline in ODA funding? In your view, what is strategically necessary for development cooperation in regard to the involvement of civil society actors?
In a situation where we see a decline generally in development aid, we have the view at the Pandemic Fund that looking to, for example, faith-based actors is key for the future development also in global health. And just to give 2 words on how our model works, because that will exemplify how you can move into this sector. So the Pandemic Fund has had 3 rounds of call for proposal, where countries in the global south can apply for around $25 million US. Then the country that applies brings co-investment. It finds partners, and that could be our implementing entities, so 4 UN agencies, 7 global development or multilateral development banks, Gavi, CEPI, and the Global Fund. But also private co-investments can be, co-financing can be part of it. So when we invest $1, we gear $7 in our setup. So now the portfolio at the Pandemic Fund is 11.5 billion. And when we, US dollars, so when we look into this field, it's of course super important to look into what partners can bring funding to the table. And what partners can be trusted in the process of, for example, looking into our main areas that are surveillance, laboratory, workforce development, and community engagement. And it would be very strange not to look into the faith-based organizations as a very relevant partner in that setup. So having said that, it's of course equally important to have the dialogue with the countries that apply for the funding, because all of our projects are country-led and country-driven. But an overall perspective of this financial situation, we must look all places globally to be able to run the business of development aid. And I think the Pandemic Fund has proven as one very important model. There are other setups in this that are also equally well established. But we look very clearly to the faith-based actors as a partner that we want to develop with also in the future.
Thank you. Eine kurze Antwort noch. Was ist denn jetzt dein Rat?
A very short answer, please. What is your advice on the agenda? Because we are all agree that we are not very good at the achievement of the goals of the SDG agenda. So it's very clear that we will not achieve these goals. What do you think is necessary strategically from your point of view to avoid that we'll have another agenda where most countries fail to achieve their goals because there are no incentives or sanctions? Please, a brief answer to this complex question.
Well, I think it's obvious for everyone that works in this field that the SDGs has been a framework that we have worked in, but it's not a framework that is addressed as actively more than it was if we go 5 years back. And in that sense, I think everyone, whether it be governmental actors, organizations, multilaterals, must look inward and say, what is it we bring to the table where we also have a responsibility to move certain agendas forward? It is very easy to be critical of the countries that cut down in development aid. That is very easy. It is equally more difficult to mobilize funding to do so in certain countries. So that's why we need to have a view on development aid that is, involving partners that might not have been so active at the table earlier, because we need the development aid to be, for us to be able to develop certain aspects of the world that we can't do without the funding. And then I think for governmental agencies, looking to the multilateral institutions is of course a very good way, because we have the catalytic financial model that gears funding. So I think in the future we'll see a larger role for the multilateral institutions to play. And that's an important position to engage actively on for a country.
Danke. Bevor wir jetzt die Fragen vom Publikum.
Thank you so much. Before we start answering the questions from the audience, one last point, which is also quite complex, but I would like to talk about this now, because you spoke from your perspective on how we can get religious actors involved. During the COP28, it was the first time we had a religious pavilion where religious actors from the whole world met, and we could show what are the positive impacts of religious actors on climate protection. Even the New York Times talked about this, and it doesn't happen every day that the New York Times speaks positively about religion. So the religious actors also said the following: the more greed and violence and hate leads us, so this also has a higher impact on the climate. It shows what happens inside us. So besides the technical measures, what else needs to be done if we just want to treat the symptoms, but really look at find solutions for the problems caused by humans?
Thank you. And I like the reframing that the crisis is not just the climate crisis, but the crisis is with us. And I see the environment, the atmosphere is reflecting back the consequences of our choices. And extraction, without limit, consumption without, restraint, but also the disconnect between our economic models and the ecological boundaries. And the responses have been essential and very important, mitigation, adaptation, renewable energy, food security, infrastructure resilience, all these are essential. But we need to be serious in addressing the root causes of climate change. And some of them is greed, disconnection, short-termism, but also the illusion that humans are not connected with nature. And I think that's a very important aspect. But I want to bring something else in terms of the consequences. We talk about the causes, but the consequences of climate change. And one important aspect is mental health issues that are arising because of climate change. Climate change increases displacement. Climate change risks, more violence and conflict. And we are seeing what is now a term coined eco-anxiety. And UNICEF has also been very good in mentioning in surveys to young people, this eco-anxiety, grief, trauma, the loss of connection with others because of the climate crisis and what it means in the future, but also for those that are affected. So mental health and psychosocial support for young people, for families is critical. And that's something that PART has been doing, is the face-sensitive approach to mental health and psychosocial support, because we know that when it comes to interpreting suffering and understanding and enduring suffering, religious and spiritual frameworks are critical for that. And normally religious communities are the first there to provide this psychosocial aspect. So when it comes to understanding and responding to the root causes and the consequences of climate change, we need to do a shift in our consciousness, in our understanding, as much as in the policies. And I think this ethical awareness of understanding that we cannot dominate nature, but we need a relation with Earth, that ethical awareness calls us to do two things. One is to understand the intergenerational justice. So the decisions that we make today, the decisions to produce, to subsidize, all these decisions that are made will have an impact on children that are not yet born. So I think that's an important, this intergenerational justice, but also the interconnectedness. The support to consumption, the support to financing deforestation, fossil fuel. All these decisions have an impact also that are made in one place, have an impact in another place. And for me, that's an important aspect because it's an ethical aspect. We hold the lives of others in our hands, and what we do or do not do have an impact on ourselves and others. And there is a Danish theologian, Luxdrup, that talks about the ethical demand, that we should care for the other, not because we have an obligation to do it, but the simple fact of being a human. And it's this ethical demand that we need to take care. So I want to finish Khushwant, you mentioned this sentence in the COP pavilion. The more greed, violence, and hatred guide us, the hotter the climate will become. And I think the opposite is true. The more justice, compassion, and solidarity guide us, the more space we create for healing, not only Earth, but also our hearts.
Danke, das waren wunderschöne Schluss.
Thank you so much. That was great closing words for the panel discussion. We have prepared so many other questions, but you also have the possibility to hand in your questions. So if you have a question, please tell us your name and institutions and one clear question and say to whom you want to address your question. Let us start here. Zishan Mahmoud. I'm head of Landesverband NOC, Islamischer Wohlfahrtsverband, who is working here in the welfare state. Thank you, Maria, to your words concerning Ramadan. For example, we just had in the Federal Ministry for the Environment an event for young target audience. And for the first time, religion and sustainability has been on the agenda. For the first time, that has been a success. But the young target group, they have lots of worries of how we are going to continue in Germany and in Europe. Friday for Future, we have seen this initiative. And this initiative, of course, comes from a long time ago for many reasons. But the worries that young people have is, for example, my commitment, for example, in the service of society, how can I make it visible to make sure that it's not getting lost? And that's a question to Mr. Thomas Rachel, for example, or representative for all the worries that we have in Germany and in Europe. Could you give us an answer? Yes, one short, precise answer. Well, for Europe, Germany, and the world, I can only tell you that if people feel that something has to change, then I come back to Martin Luther. If the world goes down, I'm going to plant an apple tree. That's the basic idea, that we can and do something to change something there. And we have a great luck. And the young people who live in Germany here today, that's possible. There are other countries, for example, you have your critical approach. If you have an idea for change, you are going to be put in prison. That is not the case in Germany. So give courage to people, give them courage to take the initiative and also to vote for democratic parties, to also look at the World Hunger Aid and also others and all the development aid agencies. Democracy lives from the fact that people are going to do that. Nothing is going to save democracy, not even environment. We have to do something actively for that. And thank you so much. Next question. Well, I try to be as precise as possible. Thank you so much for this very clear moderation. It was great to be here. Kasia Wojcik, I'm come from Berlin Protophone, a self-organized migration organization. I've been working for the next 20 years for migration because I believe in the dignity of all the humans. And I've been working for that. Mr. Rachel, you talked about civic society and that you are defending democracy and also German civic society. I believe in that. I have not dealt with you exactly, but what do you think about the German frontier policy, for example, concerning the Mediterranean and also the fact of talking about solidarity and about empathy and about sealing back, for example, and about, for example, talking about values and about all the deportation images, what has been happening for years with human dignity, what is happening on our continent. What do you think about that? I mean, I think I cannot put it in 3 sentences, but of course, human dignity and the right of every human have to come first. And I think we have to look, as our constitution said, if you are politically or religiously or in otherwise then being persecuted, you can apply for asylum. And I think it's really sad, it's alarming, and it's dramatic that people are drowning because they are fleeing from their countries. And that's a great challenge for the world community. It's a great challenge for Germany, Europe, and all the other countries. But I would also like to say, but there are reasons for that. There are reasons in the Sudan, for example, 2 military, for example, leaders who say that they have to wage war against each others and millions of people have to flee because every flight and refuge has its reasons. No one wants to leave their family voluntarily where they have the family and when they can get their way of living. So these are all the things that we have to look at in general. Fadi, next question.
Thank you. I'm Fadi Dao, Executive Director of Globe Ethics, coming from Geneva. Thank you for the invitation and for this timely and rich discussion. I would like to use something Maria Lucia said, rephrasing it a bit in my way and ask my question. You mentioned the erosion of the foundational values somehow of human rights, development, and I would add international also order in a way. And this is definitely true, and not only as a narrative, but as dynamics, as investment from peace towards security, from diplomacy towards transactional international relations, and so on. So this is definitely something that can represent the current reality in our world. So my question is about the title of the session, and it is for whoever would like to answer from the panelists. Religion Matters can be understood as a reactive answer to this situation, meaning that, hey, we want to defend what remains for us in this changing framework, or a proactive attitude saying we have resources that can address and help resolving the new world problems today. So my question related to this is, what are the platforms where religions, because we heard lots of good examples and specific solutions, but I would love to hear more about what is or are the platforms where religions can matter in the sense of engaging with other stakeholders. And to end, just to mention a similar initiative related to the role of faith actors in times of war and atrocities. A white paper will be published as the outcomes of this initiative next week, concluded to the need for multi-stakeholder alliances today to respond to those situations. Thank you.
Esben, you want to answer?
Yeah, I would like to answer to that. So if we look back in the zeros when the growth of population in Asia was the highest, we could see that here a lot of animal-related diseases into humans were a fact, and it created avian influenza, it created SARS, it created a lot of challenges, for example, in the global health system. If we are proactive and we look forward, we know that the global growth in population will be in sub-Saharan Africa the next 20 years. We know it's an area with strong faith-based actors. There's a lot of networks across the African continent where faith-based actors play a role. So we can already now start in the development agencies, in the governments, in the multilateral organizations to set up structured initiatives, for example, like pandemic preparedness and prevention, as we do at the Pandemic Fund, and invest and prepare for the consequences we know that will come when there are 2 billion more on the planet, where 800 million will be new in Africa. This gives a lot of opportunities, but it also creates challenges, for example, within sustainable food production, within global health, within education. But the faith actors can play a proactive role with governments and global actors. But I will also say they also need to define it with themselves. You know, it's a two-way street, which means faith actors needs to be active, pursuing governments, pursuing multilateral organizations and so forth, so they can show how do they actually fit into the equation. Because that's one of the challenges today when you work in the multilateral development sector, that these both CSOs and FPOs, they don't function like a government. So how do you place them into this? And that's why the dialogue is so important. So you break down the barriers and you create the systemic solutions where they can be delivery partners in a number of areas.
Ja, danke. Das beantwortet ein bisschen auch die Frage, warum wir eigentlich PART gegründet haben. Das war eigentlich genau der Ansatz.
That responds to the question why we had a cooperation with PART. One last question here. Do we have another question from the audience? I'm Gertin Nützel. I work together with the international students as a pastor, and I've been with PART program for a long time. How do you work with that? And how, for example, the use and the abuse of religion, how has that been working if you look at the United States and also here in Europe, for example, excluding people from religion in the GIZ, for example? What do you think? What does religion do for cooperation and for joint cooperation in GIZ? Now I ask myself, is the questions to the facilitator or to whom is the question addressed? To the director, as it seems. To whom is the question addressed? So to make sure that no one goes home and say that we had a diffusion of responsibility, I try to answer the question very briefly. Let me say that concerning PART, for example, we have very clear criteria for accession with whom we want to cooperate, and Rachel has said that and Esben has said it. We have a very clear value compass, also in cooperation with religious actors, and to put it in simple words, those who, for example, in their clarity, for example, they respected, for example, and we want to solve them together with SDGs. We want to solve that together. we did not gain. We are very small.
Für die Zukunft ist es das richtige Modell. Das sind andere
And we said there are also other questions who are very cooperative, but based on our question, we are very confident. If you have a religious background and a civil society, if you want to make everyone happy, environment protection, we need all of you.
Weil wir jetzt zur letzten Runde kommen und auf die freue ich mich besonders, denn das ist die Runde, wo die Panelisten nicht genau wissen, was sie
Yeah, we're now coming to the last round, is where the panelists don't know what I will ask. I will start with Maria Lucia. I will give you 2 words and you have to choose one. So this will apply to everybody. And we say that there's not many things you have to do in life, but you have to the bathroom. And wisdom of children, what we say first is what counts. Okay, I'll start with you. Activism or introspection?
Introspection.
Innenschau. Goldene Regel oder Völkerrecht?
Golden rule or international law?
Golden rule.
Intuition oder Strategie?
Intuition or strategy?
Strategy.
Ja, Sie schnaufen schon, Herr Schäfer-Gümbel, Sie sind gleich dran. Aber erst
Mr. Schäfer-Gümbel, you will be next, but first, actually, Mr. Rachel, concentrate. Okay, Constitution or the Bible?
Diplomatie oder Klartext?
Diplomacy or plain speaking?
Nee. Sie müssen sich entscheiden.
Klartext.
No, you actually have to take a decision.
Okay, das lasse ich gerade so durchgehen.
Okay, I will accept this.
Europa.
Germany or Europe? Professor Amin,
Irgendwie will das Ding nicht halten.
I think this doesn't
Bitteschön.
want to stay. Are you ready?
Tradition oder Transformation?
Tradition or transformation?
Bineka, Vielfalt oder
Binika, diversity or Tungal unity?
Tungal unity.
nein. Sie müssen sich
Diversity,
entscheiden.
diversity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Spiritualität oder Religion?
Spirituality or religion?
Okay.
Religion.
Danke. So, jetzt sind Sie dran, Herr Schäfer-Gümbel.
Okay, now it's your turn, Mr.
Das
Schäfer-Gümbel.
wird spannend. Ich bin wirklich
It will be
Routine
very
oder
exciting. I'm curious. Routine or disruption?
Stuhlkreis oder Rednerpult?
Circle of chairs or lectern? Neither of them. No, you have to decide, please.
Wahrheit
Lectern.
oder Harmonie?
Truth or harmony? Truth.
Esben.
Thank you, Mr.
Ich hatte
Esben.
vorher eine ziemlich krasse Frage, aber
I
auf der Zugfahrt,
had
als wir dann so gesprochen haben,
a
habe ich gedacht, nee, das
very
kann ich nicht
extreme
stellen, das ist ganz
question,
sicher.
but
Freiheit oder
before I thought that I cannot ask it. Freedom or responsibility?
Oder Performance?
Hygge, coziness or performance?
Also niemand muss das Wort kennen. Ich habe es auch nachgeschlagen.
Nobody needs to know the word. I had to look it up while I prepared, and I found this word. It seems to be very much on vogue in Scandinavia, and it means coziness.
Wohlergehen.
Growth or well-being?
Ich habe fast gedacht beim Politiker.
Growth.
Sie sind am
I
Ende.
actually thought this since you're a politician. We are at the end.
Dank.
Thank you so much to all the panelists.
Alle hatten sehr, sehr viel zu tun. Ich weiß.
I know you all had so much to do. You have many challenges in Indonesia. Also at the World Bank, Maria Lucia, also the NGOs are also under pressure. I already mentioned it for Thorsten Schäfer-Gümbel that he is a crisis manager. And Mr. Rachel, we went to the Bundestag earlier. There were so many live streams. And then I went to the corner where the AfD was standing. And I was asking myself, should I walk in there and give them a statement? in even a better German than I'm speaking now. Should I make some jokes? But then I actually walked away because the camera was on and I preferred to walk away. But it was a very impressive visit, I have to say. So thank you so much to the technical team who made all of this possible. Thank you also to the interpreters. We don't see them because they're online somewhere. So thank you so much for the interpretation. Thank you to the caterer Gewürze. And I want to underline that these are only women with a migration background. And most of them come from an Arabic country. We love the food, so thank you so much to the caterer. And also thank you to this representative office of GIZ. What a wonderful building. All the events that we had here in the context of religion or values were wonderful. Thank you so much for the caretaker here. I brought some chocolate. I'm actually accused of being bribed. Thank you, Timo, and all the team, Brit, and all the others who are here. And thank you to the BMZ. Dr. Bernthold Weig is here. Without the BMZ, we wouldn't be able to sit here. Since 2015, so for more than 10 years, we have been able to talk about this complex topic that is close to our heart. And we can do this despite all the challenges. Thank you so much for that. So I think everybody deserved a round of applause.
Ich will mir erlauben, im Namen, glaube ich, des Podiums hier.
So I would like to allow myself to thank everybody here in the panel and everybody who was involved for this amazing work and for this important work. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for GIZ for making this forum possible. I had promised that we have some music at the end, which will inspire us. So I kindly asked Daniel to come on stage again. And after the music, I kindly asked the panelists to stay here because we want to take a group picture. I am sure our photographer will also do a great job, and there will be some finger food afterwards. Daniel, the floor is yours. I just want to mention briefly that I sing Jewish songs because I'm also part of the Jewish community in Frankfurt. So I would like to sing a song of blessings. It's saying that there might be different angels around me. There's Michael, who is like God. And then on my other side is Gabriel, God is my strength. And in front of me is Uribe, God is my light. And behind me should be Raphael. God is my healer, my doctor. And above my head, I would like to see Shekhinah, who is the goddess of the present, as a blessing for all of us and for all the huge challenges lying ahead of us.
Shachri
Vielen herzlichen Dank, Daniel. Sehr berührend.
Thank you so much, Daniel. This was very touching. And the food is yours. Have a great evening.